So is this going to, you're just broadcasting this privately and then you're going to edit it. Is that it?
Well, I don't know how much editing will be involved, but yeah, I will rip the audio from the
Yeah,
from the
rip it
YouTube
on.
video and use it on the radio show tomorrow.
So what's this radio show you have to get?
Have you not been listening?
Well, my internet's screwed. I can't get to any sites.
Oh, I see.
I got the weirdest internet problem where I can get to about 10 sites and I can't get to any other ones. So I can get Google and Facebook and YouTube and like the Guardian website, and that's it. And so I can't listen to any podcasts. I can only get stuff on YouTube. So, and it's been going on for 2 months. It's super fucking annoying.
And this happens with multiple computers or just your just one computer?
Multiple computers, multiple operating systems, and computers that work fine in every other system. And it's like my broadband supplier is having a clue. They fixed it yesterday. They fixed it twice for 36 hours. It's something in the exchange, and then it goes again. So I woke up this morning and it was gone again. So I was like, fit to strangle somebody.
Hey, your volume just jumped up there. Have you done something different?
Nope, not a thing.
Do you have a mic plugged in, or is this just the built-in mic on your computer?
No, this is like a fancy compressor mic for my podcast. So let me see. Sometimes I've noticed that I do another podcast with some other guys on Google Hangout sometimes, and sometimes the sound becomes super clear and really good, and then other times it dips off. So I don't know if that's what's happening.
Yeah. Oh, I don't understand the problem with Google Hangouts. It seems that Google has got the people and the technical know-how to, I mean, if they're going to enter the social media space, it seems they've got the resources to do it right. I don't understand why they don't.
Does anybody use Google Plus? Like G Plus? Do you use it?
I did when it first premiered. I was pretty excited about a Facebook alternative, but the implementation was really sort of haphazard. And then I noticed that most of the people on it were the techno-utopian folks and the hyper-rationalist, militant atheist type people. And to get a wider variety of interactions with people, I had to go back to Facebook.
Yeah, I think this concept of circles is not intuitive. Even if it just means groups or whatever, it's just not an intuitive one. It's like it's been designed by mathematicians. It's like set theory. Who the hell finds set theory intuitive?
Right. I don't mind the circles. I mean, I kind of like it, in fact, but I've just never, I like it as an idea, but I've never used it.
Yeah, well, I actually did a degree in mathematics and I don't like it. So maybe, I don't know why. Who knows? If maybe I'm not their core audience. What do you reckon? Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to turn off my camera again. There we go.
Oh yes, very dashing.
Yeah, that's my the typical user profile pic is the skinniest you've been in the last 5 years. Well, that's that.
Yes, and always from your good side at an angle. Never straight on.
Yeah, the 3/4 profile is key.
A friend of mine, she worked for Sony in Spain. A friend of mine's sister, and do you know that guy Julio Iglesias?
Mm-hmm.
Like the older guy. She was like, I think she used to do a lot of work with him, and like she had loads, like hundreds of pictures where she was in with him, just personal ones, and every single one was from his good side. There was no photos ever taken from his bad side, even if I don't know how he manages it. You think you'd switch off at least once.
Well, you just have to either be a militant curator of your own photographs or pay somebody to do that job for you.
That's probably it.
Are you familiar with the website? I don't know how it's pronounced, but it looks like Quora or Quora.
Kind of. That's the one that answers questions, is it?
Right. So I will read stuff on there from time to time. They've decided that I'm primarily interested in mixed martial arts, so I get a lot of notifications from them about discussions about that topic. Which I'm mildly interested in, but it's not my overriding passion or anything. But I was reading a discussion on there about whether or not Elon Musk, or maybe it was Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
I forget which one. They kind of get mixed up in my head now. But I'm going to say it was Elon Musk. That does he lift weights? Because there are lots of pictures where he looks beefy. And various people who are weightlifters chimed in to say basically, no, he doesn't lift weights. But so the explanation is why are these pictures out there where he looks like maybe he does? And it's because he's a billionaire, and he has people take pictures of him which are flattering, and they only use the most flattering photos. So he's probably a soft-bodied guy with a few extra pounds, but from the right angle and in the right light and in the right clothes, it could be muscle.
And a bit of photoshopping.
Perhaps.
They put him on top of Hulk Hogan.
Well, no, they don't do anything as obvious as that. I think there's probably not even any photoshopping in it. It's just, professional photographers know how to flatter their subject.
But I saw one, I think any of these photos now that are used, nearly they're all shopped. Like even the ones you think that aren't shopped or where they smooth out anything. Like there's pictures now of Naomi Campbell, and she literally looks the same age as she did 30 years ago. And you're like, how does she do it? Well, she's not,
Well, there was a controversy a few years back. I forget who it was, but there was a female politician who appeared on the cover of, I think, Time magazine. And the criticism was that she wasn't photoshopped, that it was just a straight up high res photograph, without the blemishes smoothed out and without the pores, filtered away. And the argument was that because these Photoshop touch-ups are so ubiquitous now, they're expected. If you don't do it to somebody, that's an intentional effort to make them look ugly and less appealing.
Yeah. If they don't like your politics, don't Photoshop them well.
Right. Or at all.
At all, yeah.
And the thing is, with very high resolution cameras that we have now, they pick up all sorts of things that didn't get picked up in the pre-digital age. So yeah, it does
look rough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like if you're a newscaster on HD TV and you don't wear makeup, then you're going to look strange.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to remember what there was. The start of some show or something where they had stuff in super high definition, and you see people like moving slowly and stuff like that, and they don't look like humans. Like when your eye actually gets to focus intently on a spot of a human. Like if you look really closely at, say, a part of your finger, it starts to look like really haggard, But no one normally gets to actually really stare at that mole on your face or, your broken nose. You just don't get to when it's moving.
Well, hey, this fascinating as all this is, it's not what I'm going to talk about. We'll call that warm up. I'll throw that on the C-ROM vaults, and for the radio, we will talk about Brexit,
excellent.
So let me just introduce you. I'm not sure how to introduce you other than to say, here is my fellow podcaster, Tom O'Brien, whose name and accent would make you think that he's calling from Ireland, but you're in London, right?
I am. I'm living in London the last 9-10 years.
All right. How old are you?
Oh, that's a very personal question, KMO.
Well, you can round it to the nearest decade if you want.
Well, yeah, no, I'll round down. No, I'm 39. I turned 39 2 days ago.
Okay, well, I'm 48, so you get no sympathy from me about being 39.
Excellent.
But the reason for the question was, if you had moved to London at the age of say 22 and you lived there for 10 years, you'd probably sound like a Londoner.
Oh, well, an Irishman would never lose his accent and gain an English accent. That's a very big no-no.
Well, not on purpose.
Yeah, no, like I think there's a few bits of kind of London things. Some more of the words. One thing when I go home, one of my friends really annoys me is that when I finish a sentence, I say "yeah" at the end of it. So if I was saying, "Oh, I went to see the match last night," yeah, and he just every time I say the yes, at the end of it, he just goes "yeah," like like a Londoner, and he just totally drives me insane. So that's about all I've taken. Thanks be to God. I won't want to lose my, your Irish accent over here. It's a real even in England, people love an Irish accent. It's great to have an accent people actually like, you know.
Yeah, I can't even fake an Irish accent. I can't even put on a cartoony one.
Yeah, especially with like, do people know your real name over there
Uh,
on the show?
it's not a secret. I mean, maybe two
Because
minutes on Google would find it.
you have a real potato name as well, so you should be able to do some type of an accent.
Well, I've lived in Australia, and I can do a passable Australian accent for a few seconds, but
Yeah, well, that's quite. I think the American and the Australian they're quite close, aren't they? They're both a bit. They're kind of nasally a bit, both of them.
well, I don't know. I couldn't tell you how an American accent sounds to a non-American.
Yeah, well, like it depends. I suppose there is like the different, but it's weird in America. There's not that many different accents, say, compared to like for its geographical size, it's so enormous. There doesn't seem to be the same variety of say accents as you would get in somewhere like England or Ireland. You know,
Well, there are quite a few, but if you're on television, then you get trained to use the Midwestern dialect. And if you haven't traveled around the United States, you probably haven't encountered the huge variety of regional dialects that are to be found here.
yeah, but I'd say there's probably like Ireland is probably got 4 million people and it's probably about a 20th the size, and it probably has the same variation in accent. You know, if you take all the deep south or you take all the different cities in America, there's probably the same variation, and in England as well. Like there's places in Ireland or England, probably just because the societies were more isolated for longer periods of time. Go back 100 years ago, they were quite isolated, so they developed accents. The accents even in Ireland and England now they're tending to smooth out, like they are kind of smoothing in America too. But like there's towns in England that could be 10 miles away and they'll have an entirely different accent. But it's the same in Ireland. My friend's granny, best friend at home, his granny is like, somebody said that she had an accent from this town that's like 7 miles away, and she was disgusted. She said, "I don't have a Navan accent. That's crazy." She's only like 5 miles down the road. She was very insulted.
Well, I've done voice training, and I've read and listened to people talking about ways to do different accents. And what I've been told about the American accent is that, and I deviate from that, but Americans tend to emphasize vowel sounds and de-emphasize consonants, particularly consonants at the end of words. And so I think the example where it's really easy to hear is say the word P-O-T.
Yeah, well, Irish people have great difficulty with T's. So
well, go ahead and say that.
Well, I would say pot.
Right. So you say pot, and the T at the end is a separate syllable. It's a separate sound all its own. Whereas if I were just being completely unconscious and natural about it, I'd say pot.
Yeah, but I kind of say, I don't say pot with a hard T. I say it with like an SH. It's nearly like more pot. It's very odd. English people really like the one thing they do to annoy an Irish person is they say, "Can you say?" Well, I'll say it like I say it like I normally say it, 33 and a third. So we can't say, we can't say THs, or great problems with T's.
Right.
When we're supposed to say a soft T, we don't say it, and when we're supposed to say it hard, we say it soft. So it's all over the place.
You've surely seen the TV show, the HBO series The Wire.
Yeah.
So it takes place in Baltimore, which has a particular accent. And many of the actors in it are British actors doing this Baltimore accent. And a word that you'll hear repeated again and again in that is the word all right. So ALRIGHT. But if you say it with the Baltimore inflections and speech patterns, that word contains no consonants.
Yeah, it's just like I.
Right.
Yeah. I know, and your man who plays what's the main guy, Dominic
McNulty.
Yeah, McNulty. His American accent is terrible. I don't know if Americans find that accent bad. I always cringe when I hear his American accent.
Well, the Baltimore accent that he did on The Wire sounded pretty good to me, and I was living near Baltimore at the time when I was watching it.
Maybe it's just a Baltimore accent then. I yeah no, because he's in this other one now as well. He's in The Affair, isn't that right?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, I think it's HBO or one of these, but and he's in that and he's the same accent again. But yeah, I, American everybody in the world I think can do a reasonably passable American accent because we're all consume so much American media. You know, it's like the way
Well, I've heard some
American
really bad
actors
ones on Doctor Who.
on Doctor Who. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I've got windows open next to me, and cars are starting to drive by, so I need to pause and go close a couple windows.
Yeah, far ahead.
All right, so since we can't get around to talking about politics and economics, we'll go on with TV and accents and such. Surely you've seen at least some Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I have.
So the dwarf, played by Peter Dinklage, the character is Tyrion Lannister.
He may have the worst English accent of all time.
The dope fiend said the exact same thing. And the thing is, I don't think he's doing an English accent. I've seen him in other stuff, and he has the exact same delivery in everything he's done.
Well, what planet is he from then? Because there's no country on Earth that has that accent.
No, he's that's it could be some element of speech pathology which he has worked hard to overcome, and this is his best approximation of just understandable English speech.
I find that really hard. I do find that hard to believe, but I'll take your word on it.
That's speculation.
That Game of Thrones, like the Game of Thrones, it's very bizarre. I don't understand why always in fantasy films everybody has an English accent. What's that about? And in that, nearly everybody's an English or an Irish actor in that. Are there any Americans in that show?
I'm not expert on the cast. I think Peter Dinklage is American.
He is American. Yeah, he's American.
I think the actor. I don't know. I mean, you can find pictures of any of them walking the streets of New York, obviously, but just because you're in New York doesn't mean you're from there.
No, but I think all of them, like the blondie one, is it Daenerys or whatever? She's English.
Okay, Nina, or not Nina, Headley, the one who played Sarah
British.
Connor on the TV, the Terminator TV show.
Yeah,
she's
Cersei.
English.
She's English, yeah.
Oh, I thought she was American. She does great American accents.
No, I think she's English because she did.
Lena Headley.
Yeah, she did. She did Judge Dredd,
and
I think she was English in that. I think she's English. Jesus, I could be wrong, but I was. If she's not, she's got a good English accent. She's got a proper stage English accent.
Well, she's an actress.
Yeah, but she's got a stage. Yeah, she is a British actress. There we go. She's got a stage accent. In England, I don't know if you know that term. There's the stage accent, which people all like a received pronunciation that people learn for the stage. So if you were to go and study in the British Academy of Acting or whatever one it is, there are certain accents that, if you want to do Shakespeare and all this, like she has that accent.
Well, let's give ourselves 2 more minutes on this topic and then switch over to something serious. Who plays the actor? Who's the actor who plays House? The acerbic.
Oh
doctor?
Yeah, Hugh Laurie.
Hugh Laurie. It's amazing to hear him speak in his normal accent.
Yeah, because he's got quite a plummy accent, and but his American accent in House, I just think it's dreadful. I don't know what Americans think. Yeah, that sounds like to a non-American, it sounds so fake. It sounds like I can't really do accents, but I think I do a better accent than that.
Well, I would never guess that he's not American just watching that show.
Seriously, because a non-American can tell straight away.
Maybe there are certain certain telltale signs that I'm just missing, but he sounds really good to me. I'll tell you who sounds, and my friend Marty and I, we just mock him mercilessly, and it's really unfair. But Andrew Lincoln on The Walking Dead.
Rick Grimes, yeah.
Yes, he has such a narrow range of emotions in which he can maintain that accent. And even American actors, their Southern accents tend to sound really fake. I mean, really put on.
Yeah, they're really like very few actors are really good at accents. Like, say for example, the Irish accent is a famously hard accent to do well, and when somebody does it, you're it's like amazing when they do it. It's like usually when an American tries an Irish accent, usually it's absolutely atrocious. Because like say like in America, there's certain accents that you can do. You can do an Italian American, a New York accent, or you can do whatever you want to do. But like when an American tends to do an Irish accent, they tend to mix all Irish accents as if there's only one. And so to an Irish person, it sounds like totally retarded,
Mm-hmm.
like this word is said from this type of accent and the other one. So there's a mix. But tell you who did a brilliant Irish accent was, what's her name? She did Elizabeth, Kate Blanchett. Kate Blanchett did such a good Irish accent that it was impossible to tell. Like it was the best Irish accent that's ever been done.
So what sort of Irish was it?
She just did a very particular type of a Dublin middle class accent, just like a very particular type, and it was just perfect, and it wasn't an Irish accent that somebody would particularly know. It's just a very run of the mill middle class Dublin, South Dublin accent, and she just did it absolutely perfectly.
Well, I imagine Kate Blanchett has the advantage of being able to go and study and listen in Ireland, whereas a lot of the people doing bad Irish accents you've heard have probably never been to Ireland.
Oh, there's a whole troupe of Irish American actors who get cast as Irish people in films, and they just murder it. Even the Irish American guys can't do it.
Like Cole Meany.
Oh, Colm, no, he's Irish. He's from Dublin.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he used to drink in my local pub in Dublin. You used to work right beside where I lived in Phibsborough. Colin Meany, yeah. Yeah, he's a bit of a legend. Have you ever seen the Roddy Doyle films?
I don't think so.
Have you heard of Roddy Doyle?
No.
He did. He wrote a lot of very popular, very good kind of Irish books, and they made. Have you seen the film The Commitments?
Yes,
that's one of his books. Okay. So Colin Meany is basically the main guy in a couple of films that were made. There was The Commitments, I think The Van and The Snapper. There's a few of them. But Colin Meany, he's a bit of a legend.
Now his first name is Colm, right?
Yeah, Colm.
It's Colm. Okay.
Yeah.
It looks like Colm.
Yeah. Colon. No. No, it's Colin. Colin Meany, yeah. No, he's very good. He's a very good comic actor, really.
Yeah, I mean, he's just got a sort of a avuncular personality, and I imagine he plays drunks well.
He does, yeah. Like the thing is, when he was in Star Trek, he toned down his Irish accent in that. So his Irish accent was, because he's a proper kind of working class Dublin accent, and in that one he kind of toned it down quite a lot. So it was quite different to how he's acted in a lot of his Irish stuff. He's much more kind of got a hard working class accent, I think, in real life too.
Okay, so I'm looking at this Hangouts on air window, and unlike Skype, it doesn't tell me how long we've actually been on the call.
It tells me here it's 27 minutes.
Where in the window do you see that?
I see that because when I came up to my PC, in the corner, there's like a Google thing that had popped up on the right hand side. Like if it's like somebody sent me a message. Let me send you a message and see if it pops up to you.
Okay.
I just sent hello to you.
I heard a chime, but I don't see the message.
So it should be in your, if you go to your Gmail and have a look to see if there's anything you can expand, maybe in the bottom right-hand corner.
There's the chat window that it's completely separate from the Google Hangouts window.
I know, yeah, it's very, is there any settings on the side, control room or anything like that?
Well, now I've totally lost the window. Let's see, here it is. Yeah, I've got the Hangout toolbox open.
Try, and there's nothing there.
No, let's see, what's that? Okay. Huh. Well, I'm going to mute notification sounds.
That's really shit, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's just the problem with
so you should be able to see
Google.
in that, if you keep the chat window open, you should be able to see how long, because it'll say hello, and it'll probably say 2 minutes ago or something in a while.
Well, maybe if I close Gmail and you send another chat, then it'll pop up in this this G+ window. But right now, the chat messages that you sent are in Gmail, which is a completely different window.
Yeah, or you just have a laptop or something.
It's a completely different window. Go ahead and send another message. Did you send it?
Yep.
Huh. Yeah, nothing.
Oh well, you can read that message when we're finished. You'll enjoy it.
So I'm just going to look at my computer clock and note that we are starting for real at 9:34 a.m.
Let's do it.
And we'll do it. Yes, and I will completely introduce you afresh because I don't see any way of editing all that out.
Yeah.
Starting again. Well, and now on the internet, via some clunky way that isn't Skype, I have in conversation Tom O'Brien, host and author of the From Alpha to Omega podcast. Tom, it's good to talk to you again.
Hi, Kamo. Long time no see.
Yes, you know, I heard your recent conversation with Doug Lane, and you said the same thing to him, and he said, "Well, we've never seen each other."
That's true. And then I said to him, "Well, only in our dreams, Doug."
Yes, to which he said, "Too much information."
Never too much information.
All righty. So you and Doug were talking about cultural Marxism, which is a topic that I would like to broach with you after we have talked about Brexit, the vote, the British people, or some fraction of them, went out to the polls last week, and they opted to basically dissolve their relationship with the European Union, or at least, withdraw their membership. It's a non-binding referendum. The British government doesn't have to do anything about it, but the EU government has basically told the British government, you can't take your time about this. If you're leaving, you have to leave now.
Yes. So technically, I think under the treaty, there is a section where I think it's Article 50 in I forget which treaty it is now. It might have been
the Lisbon Treaty.
The Lisbon Treaty. There was a series of them. There was Nice Treaty, Maastricht, Lisbon. They're all mashed together. But in that one, I think it's Article 50 or something, and you have to trigger it, and then you negotiate for 2 years, and then you're out. But so they haven't triggered it. So the Europeans kind of want them to trigger it, but the Brits don't have to trigger it until they decide to. So there's a lot of kind of politics going on between. I think Europe wants this bit to be over. They don't want this to drag on for 10 years and for it to be a kind of a football in political and European politics. They kind of want it either for them to say, "Oh, we won't trigger it," or "We will, and we're going to negotiate now and get it done and over." So I think that's the lay of the land at the moment.
Well, David Cameron resigned over the issue. He was favoring Remain, and he basically put up the referendum just to maintain a coalition with a different party. And he has said, well, since you all voted the way I didn't want you to, I guess that's a vote of no confidence in my leadership, so I'm resigning. But he's announced that he will resign in 3 months' time, and that the actual Brexiting will have to be done by his successor, which he's just introduced this immediate 3-month waiting period. And the EU wants nothing to do with that. They want the exit to be as painful as possible to Britain, to put the fear of God into anybody else who might think of leaving.
Yeah, but the Europeans haven't got any leg to stand on, because they don't have any. They can't force the Brits to do it if they don't want to. So the other thing is, he didn't do it for coalition purposes. He did it in English politics. You have you have the Tories, which are kind of a pretty hard right kind of Republican type party, and then to the right of them again, you have UKIP and their United Kingdom Independence Party, and they were the guys that were really always wanted to get out of Europe. And David Cameron, to basically stop UKIP from getting a lot of seats in Parliament, he promised this, and so all the UKIP people essentially voted for the Conservatives, and so they managed to get a narrow majority in that. So it wasn't technically for coalition purposes; it was basically to keep UKIP out. But it's quite a political bombshell that it actually didn't pass, because you had most sectors of the establishment supporting it. So you had the multinational corporations, you had the City of London essentially, pretty much fully backing it. You had the banking system, you had the British Labour Party, the major centre-left party. You had the Tory party, you had the Scottish National Party, you had the Catholic parties in Northern Ireland. So the only ones that were kind of against it were UKIP, and I think maybe some of the loyalist or Protestant parties in Northern Ireland. So, but they they won. People saying it was narrow, but it was like 52% to 48%. So like if Obama wins the U.S. presidential election by 4%. They say that I think when Obama beat John McCain, what was the margin? It was something like 52-48, and people said that was quite a landslide. But it was, so it was quite a substantial. It wasn't that narrow a win. You know what I mean? 4% is, and it was a very high turnout. So, I just think people were very surprised by it all.
So you were not eligible to vote, is that right?
No, I actually, due to old empire weird politics, I could actually vote as an Irish person, which yeah. So there's some strange, because Ireland used to be a part of the United Kingdom prior to, I think, 1921-22. So
and a piece of it still is.
And a piece of it still is. So there are lots of kind of strange things where Irish people can vote in English elections and vice versa, and you don't need a permit to travel. You could, until like the whole terrorist thing kicked off again, you could fly from Ireland to England without a passport, without any ID. You could fly over, and you wouldn't have any checks, and you can. So they have there's a lot of there's like very close relationships there. So I could actually vote in the referendum. I wasn't sure if I could, so I went to my local community centre to vote there the other day, and I was like, I just asked just to see on the off chance I was able to vote. So I was quite surprised. Yeah, but it's interesting here, because the thing about Brexit that might confuse a lot of people is, like, you see, the Tory party and the right generally in England have used the European Union as a kind of a kicking ball for all the country's ills, for the last 40 years. So they played this kind of a double game where they actually want to be in the European Union, but they use it as a way to blame, say, all the policies that are bad in the country. They say, oh, it's European regulations and all this kind of stuff. And all the major papers here, most of them are owned by billionaires. I'm sure it's the same in America. And most of them are right wing. and they also use this anti-immigration card, and they use this anti-EU thing. So it's a way to kind of split the working class vote. It's to kind of turn them away from voting in their interests to trying to say, oh, well, we don't like immigration, and so the Tories seem to be against immigration. But in actual fact, they're very much in favour of it. The other thing is that Europe gets blamed for the immigration, what they call it, a crisis over here, but the level of immigration. But it's quite funny there, because when the Lisbon or the Nice Treaty, I'm not sure exactly which one, was introduced, which brought all the former Soviet bloc countries in, so like Bulgaria, Romania, Lithuania, Poland, and this. The countries in the EU, they had an opt-out clause for the freedom of movement for these new countries. So the idea was, you have a big state like Germany, and it's got a massive border with Poland, and the differential between wages there is massive. The Germans could be on average earning, literally 10 to 20 times their wage at one stage. I remember I spent a summer in Poland in 1998, and I think the average a teacher was earning €200 a month. So that would be about $300 a month for a teacher. So, and then in Germany, they would probably be getting, €4,000 a month or €3,000 a month. So a very, very big difference in the pay scales. So to protect against this, they had an opt-out clause by where the Germans could say, well, we don't have to accept any, say, Polish guys, Polish women coming in working for 20 years, so they can still have their border and still maintain their closed labor force to these much poorer countries. The idea was that there would be an equalization over the time using structural funds. So the Germans and the British and whoever, the wealthier countries, would pay funds and help develop the poorer countries and rise them up to a decent standard. Sorry, just getting a drink of water. Whereby they wouldn't feel like they need to leave their country. If they're on 60% of the wage, people will probably just stay where they are because, all their friends and their family are there. So, but the only two countries in Europe that opted out of this was Republic of Ireland and the UK. And both of these did it, for essentially class reasons. That if you have an immigrant class coming in, and a lot of the Eastern European countries were very highly educated. It's one thing you got to say for the Soviet system. They really educated people very well, and so they were able to use that as a basically way to keep wages low. So, but that idea that England and Ireland, or the UK and Republic of Ireland, opted to allow the immigration, like I've mentioned that to many people in England, and educated people, they don't seem to know it. So they blame the EU for the immigration, while in effect that was a thing done by Tony Blair's government.
Well, I certainly don't blame working people for not understanding the intricacies of the network of treaties that created the European Union. Yeah,
well, that's to be sure. There's a lot of them, and they're all hyper complex. But that kind of a simple fact, should be a well-known fact. The fact that it doesn't even get reported by any of these newspapers, even newspapers of the left in England, don't particularly report it. It's kind of staggering, to be honest with you, because Germany, you go to Germany and they don't have the same level of immigration from those block of Soviet countries that came in together. So to blame the EU for it is a red herring. But the thing is, if we look at all the places that voted in favor of leaving, most of the parts of the English country that voted against remaining are the parts of the country that are doing extremely badly. Like, I live in London now, and London is kind of, it's quite wealthy, and it's a very unequal place, but it's prosperous. There's low unemployment and stuff like that. But you go out, myself and two of my friends, Irish friends, we drove home to Ireland for Christmas there about a couple of years ago, and we decided to drive through and stay some of the nights in some of the most run down parts of the English country. And once you get out of the main, once you get out of London and some of the main suburb and the rich areas like that are surrounded by London and the posh parts, like the cities are just they're falling apart. You know, they're really, really, and a massive unemployment, no jobs. The jobs that are there are essentially government jobs, and you know, terrible poverty. And you know, these people have basically, you know, they probably have been told by all the newspapers that they buy and that and the radio programs that they hear that it's the EU's fault. But most of this traces back to, say, the introduction, the end of the kind of Keynesian period in the 70s, and the introduction of the Thatcherite, Reaganite policies in the 70s, 80s. This coincided when I think England joined the European Union in 73. So people kind of associate what's happened in their communities. They do know, like, the working class people do know it was Thatcher. Like, Thatcher is hated by the working class in England. You know, when she died, you know, people had street parties. You know, she was really detested. But people have also been sold a line that it is Europe to blame. And the other thing, it's undeniable that you go to a lot of these places where people are working, like that the manual labour jobs that used to be done by British labour are being undercut by Eastern European labour, you know, that will come in and work harder, you know, for less money, and they can be more exploited because they're not unionised. They don't have a history of that over here. They might be only here for a year or two. They're not putting down roots in the same way. So, you know, it's a combination of I think of those two factors. One, there's definitely the working class in these areas have been put under pressure, and also they've been gutted, just like America has been. The manufacturing in America is gutted. You go to Germany. Germany has got a massive industrial base. They never left it, never lost it, because they had state policies to keep it. In England, they decided to get rid of it. And the thing is, there's only one part of manufacturing that really is booming in England, and it has never ever dipped. Have a guess what part of manufacturing that is, KMO?
Well, I'm racking my brains. I'm not coming up with anything.
The military.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I don't think of the military as manufacturing.
Yeah, but that's the massive part of British manufacturing. Probably the major part. I don't know the statistics now, but it's the military industry. And how come they're able to maintain profits in the ministry in the military one, but not in the other ones? You know, these are policy decisions by these countries. You know, the French have maintained their industrial base more than the English, and the German have completely maintained their industrial base. So, you know, these people that are, you hear the comments of the people that have voted no, and you do these vox populi. You know, racism is definitely an issue in there. Immigration is definitely an issue in there. But underlying a lot of it as well, and explicitly, the people say, you know, well, you know, things can't get any worse here. We got no jobs and things like this. You know, you go to industry. We drove through places like in Wales and, you know, like Grimsby. I don't know if you saw the latest film, Grimsby, by the guy who does Borat.
No, Sasha, I have not seen it. Yeah,
so that's
Cohen.
Yeah, that's explicitly about this problem. We drove home and we went through Grimsby on that trip home. Grimsby is a city of, I think, around 200,000 people. Now, that used to be the biggest fishing village or port in the world in the 1960s, right? And when we were there, we went to try and get something to eat, and there wasn't one restaurant in that town. Not one restaurant we could go to. Imagine that, a city of 200,000 people, all we could go to was a chip shop. Like, that puts how little is left in these places. And
right, there's nobody there with money to spend in a restaurant.
No, we asked somebody, we asked the girl in the hotel, where should we go to? The hotel we were staying in was like something out of The Shining, totally empty. And nobody had stayed in any of them for years, the beds. And all the bedrooms smelled. It was incredible. And long corridors, empty rooms that had never been full. and I don't know how many people worked in it. Right bang in the center of the city. I mean, like, I'm exactly in the middle of the city, beside the cathedral. Nobody in there. Place falling down. And we asked, where can we go for something to eat? And she said, Cleethorpes. And we were like, well, was that a name of a restaurant? She's like, no, that's a town 20 miles in the other direction. Like literally, there was a chip shop and then there was Cleethorpes. You got 200,000 people in that city. These cities are so bad. Like, I've traveled a lot of the world, I've done a lot of travel in my time, and we were so shocked. Myself and my friends were so shocked that, like, you don't have to get that far out of London. That's probably 100 miles. And there are places like this, or you go to, say, Wales, the valleys in Wales that depended on the coal mines. They are just falling apart. So these people see the establishment saying, yeah, vote for this. And all their newspapers are telling them, oh, everything is the European Union is to blame. So, they think that is to blame, and they go and they hear the people in charge saying vote for this, and they go, screw the system, we vote no.
And yet the reaction to that no vote has been really ugly. As far as I can tell, the explanation holds that the only people who voted to leave were irresponsible pensioners who pined for the days of the glorious British Empire, and working class racists who just hate all brown people. And that's the explanation for why so many people are, we're looking to make some sort of dramatic statement about their dissatisfaction with things as they are.
Yeah, like, and don't get it wrong, there's bits of that. There is definitely, we want to have a return to wasn't it great in the British Empire? These people must be, I must say that, the level of education about what the British Empire actually did in England is next to, it's non-existent about the reality of the British Empire. And so people do have a longing for this when we rule the world kind of mentality. No, I'm sure it's just the same in America. People don't learn that, say, America started the Vietnam War, but that things are, taught in certain ways. So I went to the Glastonbury Festival a few years ago. Seth and a few friends, we were flying back out from Bristol the next day, and we had some time to spare, and they had an Empire Museum in Bristol. We went in to have a look at it. 3 or 4 Irish guys, wouldn't have a high opinion of the British Empire. So we were walking around, and it was a sizable museum. We were in there for 3 or 4 hours, and in only one place did we see anything that was even remotely negative about the empire. It was a statement that read nearly exactly like this. It said something like, while the British went around the world and, brought education and religion and developed roadways and railways for all these countries, some of the natives didn't like it and they rebelled. Like, that was the only statement in the entire thing, So people here have this idea of the empire as being a great force of national pride and good. Not everybody, but there's certainly an element to that. I think, there's definitely an element of xenophobia, but that doesn't explain 52% of the people. Like, if you asked
52% of the 70-something percent who turned out to vote.
Yeah, but like, that's a very high turnout. Compare that to, say, America, where you get less than 50% for a presidential election.
I think we typically get more than 50% for presidential elections, but in the off years, when it's just members of Congress and local races.
No, I think Obama got elected on something like 49 or 51% both times. So, like, the let me check. I don't know. You check there. My internet's so dodgy, but okay. But I'm pretty sure in America there's about normally around 50% turnout for the last number of elections, and typically in England, you'd have in the high 60s, low 70s for a general election. So it's not like, it's not like Australia where you by law have to vote. So, it's as valid as any election that's ever been held in England. That's the way I put it. One second, Kim. I just need a glass of water. My mouth's drying. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me, Kamo? Let me see. Hi.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, sorry. I had to.
That's all good. I also went and got some water.
Oh, good.
So yeah, the 2012 electoral turnout was let's see, I just had it up here. 54.9%.
There you go. So, like, it's got a hell of a lot more democratic, validity, say, than an American U.S. presidential campaign. To put it into perspective, so there's definitely more going on there. Like also, if we look at, say, American politics, we have the Democratic Party being split along the Sanders line, which is the kind of a progressive left line, or you have the corporate left, which would be Hillary. So you've got that split happening on the left, and in the Republican Party, you've got the racist split with Donald Trump making explicit what has long been, dog whistle terminology from the Republican Party. You've got the Republican Party is split. It looks like the established Republican Party would prefer Hillary to win. Similarly, in England, you've got the Labour Party split right down the middle. They have there's a coup underway against Jeremy Corbyn, who is the equivalent of Bernie Sanders. He's actually more to the left of Bernie Sanders. He's an anti-imperialist. Imagine that. The Labour Party, which is the party of the left in England, has always been hugely imperialist, just like Tony Blair, say, for example. Go on, you were going to say.
Here in the United States, it seems the Democratic Party has never met a foreign war it didn't like.
Exactly. Bernie Sanders is getting praise for being kind of marginally, well, I would say Bernie Sanders is getting praised by the left in America for being not like radical, not to the left, but actually just being in the middle, what his international community would say.
Well, he's a traditional New Deal Democrat. It's just that a traditional New Deal Democrat now is so far to the left of the contemporary Democratic Party that he seems like a radical.
Exactly, but he still says things like he thinks, how we should defeat ISIS is that we should get the Jordanians and the Saudis to do it. These, who's he looking to help solve situation in the Middle East are absolute monarchies and potentates who are much of they have a large responsibility for the stuff that's going on in the first place. So it's not like, I don't know whether, I'm sure he understands it all. I think, because his brother is actually in Britain. I don't know if you know that. He's a member of the Green Party. I think he might have been elected as a councillor for the Green Party, and he would be to the left, far to the left of Bernie on everything. Maybe Bernie just feels he has to stay, he can only go so far to maintain his position. So you've got the left split, and over here you've got the left split, and then in England you've got the right split. You've got the Tory, which was split along the exact same lines. It had the corporate element, which was David Cameron and them, who always used immigration and these things to get power when they needed to, but never in such an explicitly racist way as UKIP, which kind of maps to your Donald Trump element. So we see the effects of neoliberalism. I don't like the word of neoliberal. I don't like the word neoliberalism. I feel like people try and say, if only we could get back to when capitalism was good. I don't believe it. And it is a Marxist. It's actually a Marxist term, neoliberalism, which is very funny. But so you see the. Sorry, what I was saying. You see the same splits going on both sides, and it's a reaction. You see what the policies of the right is doing on both sides, and we're not talking about the National Front or I don't know what the name of it is in America. Some workers, American Workers' Party, is it, or something? They have one of the what's the neo-Nazi party in America?
Not sure that we have one.
They're
America
definitely
is such
small
a
ones.
two-party system that there's only a tiny handful of third parties that anybody could even name, really. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a Constitution Party. There's there's a few right-wing parties that they have no more chance of ever being elected than the Greens do. In fact, the Greens are a very major party compared to some of these right-wing parties. But because we have the Democrats and the Republicans have such a lock, because they control who gets to participate in debates. There's just very little to be gained by wasting one's own mental landscape memorizing the names of minor parties. They have, unlike the British system, they have no possibility of playing any role whatsoever in the formation of policy.
Yeah, well, the British system is particularly poor as well. Like they do what they call a first past the post version. So they don't do proportional representation. So there are only really three parties in English politics, even though the Greens in England might poll 10%, but they can only literally get one MP out of 700, because you have to become, like I say, in Ireland or most European countries, you have proportional representation, which means that, like, if your party has got 10%, say, votes, they'll generally get close to 10% of the seats. But in England, unless you beat all the other parties in your local election, you don't get voted, and there's only one seat per district. So it's a way of they managed to kind of do a Democratic and Republican kind of a thing. But it's intriguing, though. You see the same phenomenon in American politics playing out in English politics. Like that's quite a thing, isn't it? That says something structural.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get all Alex Jones, globalist conspiratorial, but there is a group of people who are not particularly, they don't have all that much allegiance to a nation state. They have allegiance to their class, and their class is very international.
Yeah. And definitely there's parts of that, like, so there's parts of the Tory party that would have voted exit, and they would have been the parts that would have been less linked to the multinational corporations. So there's definitely a thing there. But, just to talk about how much the politics has changed, say, I'm sure you're aware of it, like, it's amazing to think Bernie had even a chance. But say, I was watching Newsnight. BBC Newsnight is their flagship program. It's at 10 or half 10 on BBC Two. It's one where they try and pretend it's for, like, we're being given a high-end discussion, and actually it's just completely managed. But they had a discussion on the night I saw it. I haven't seen it. Literally, I gave up watching this program. I used to like it before I read any Chomsky or Marx, but then when I figured out some a bit better how the world worked, I stopped watching it. But I was watching it the other night. I was babysitting for a friend, and it's the first time I've watched it in years. Sorry, just get a glass of water. And they were interviewing some people about what it means for the different leaders. Labour, David Cameron had just resigned, and they were talking about what it'll mean then for Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, who's like quite a radical left for the Labour Party, anti-imperialist. And the guy who was on he talked about what the vote meant, and he said, a large part of it is a reaction to neoliberal policies. And when I heard this, my jaw dropped, because if you had gone back to, say, prior to the crisis in 2008, and if you had said the word neoliberal policy on that program, you would literally never, ever be seen again on BBC television, because they would say you're a Marxist. Somebody like, say, Jeremy Corbyn, who would use that language, he would never, ever get onto television, like once in a blue moon. But so, it just shows how big a shift it is that a party can even use, say, neoliberal is a word of the Marxist left, the radical left. It's amazing that it's even managing to get on the airwaves now. I was quite shocked. For me, it was like such a depiction of how changed our politics is from, say, when you started your podcast.
Well, here in the United States, neoliberal is a word that only exists on the internet. You do not hear it in mainstream media ever. I think that there's a deliberate effort not to even acknowledge that the word exists or that there's a concept that maps onto it.
Like what's the biggest show, politics show, like in America?
Well, I could name a few, but I don't watch them, and I'm not sure which is the biggest. But there's one called Meet the Press.
Meet the Press. So the equivalent of, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Newsnight is the equivalent of Meet the Press. So imagine you had a guy come on and start talking about neoliberalism on Meet the Press on the biggest.
That will not happen.
Yeah, and imagine that it was on a day like the day there was the U.S. presidential election results came through, with the biggest audience ever watching this show, and he started talking about neoliberalism. You know, it's just it just could not happen 10 years ago. It would literally, if somebody did that, they would probably cut the feed. You know,
technical difficulties, please stand by.
Malfunction.
Yeah, things do seem to be changing quite a bit. I mean, the candidacy of Bernie Sanders would have seemed absurd 2 years ago, just if you had, if you had laid out a scenario that was the exact course of events, chain of events that happened over the last 12 months. 2 years ago, it would have seemed so fanciful and so unrealistic, it wouldn't be worth entertaining.
Well, I remember when 2008 happened and everybody was saying, where is the left? This is when the left should have been here to react. How come we're not organized to react? And I was like, I started reading about, the last crisis, the Great Depression. And, it took 10 years because the left was so weak before it happened. It took them 10 years before the New Deal really started kicking in. And there were all the agitation started, and all the mass strikes that happened across America in all the big stuff. That was some of that was post-war. Some of that took 15 years. So I think we're seeing the same phenomenon now. The left, when the crisis happened, was so weak. Like, say, somebody like Jeremy Corbyn, he actually advocates, it's not proper socialism, but worker-controlled organizations. They come from, back in the 70s, there was a time in the 70s when the British Labour parties was trying to get worker-owned organizations as a policy, one of their main policies under Tony Benn. He was the minister or the shadow minister, I think, for economics at the time. So they were kind of going to, that's starting to get very radical when you start having democratically controlled worker stuff as one of the major parties' standpoints. But like Jeremy Corbyn is from that wing of the Labour Party, which was essentially extinguished. There was only like a few people that remained from it, and so he's from that wing. So he's well to the left of Bernie Sanders, but he's still. What's interesting is how these parties operate. That they're able to maintain. That's one thing I find kind of fascinating. That the Labour Party and the Democratic Party are able to maintain these quite radical left wings, and they nearly use them as as the system, kind of feeds them and keeps them such that if there is a crisis, they can use them to maintain the system. So we still don't see any break from the system, but we're seeing definitely a change in the politics.
So I want to harken back to your conversation with Doug Lane, which mostly the listeners will not have heard. This is for the radio podcast. This is for the radio show, not for the C-ROM podcast. So it's the local Bellows Falls, Vermont area listenership, and a lot of the folks will not have the history with the various players that we're referencing. But if you would you give an encapsulated definition of cultural Marxism, or your understanding of it, what that term means?
Yeah, I think it's kind of come to be a kind of a curse word by the right. But in its origins was that when Marx did all of his work, people like, say, for example, me, before I read or studied any Marx, I thought like he was like some kind of, I don't know what I thought he was, like a revolutionary or, a Che Guevara type. But in reality, the vast majority of Marx's work was economics. So he was trying to understand in detail how capitalism worked. And he spent his whole life writing 3 volumes and more of Das Kapital. And in that, he started to figure out how capitalism works. And he also solved, at the time, a lot of these known problems in economic theory. And he solved all these problems. So this was what Marx was doing. And he also did a little bit of philosophy, where he was talking about, which actually started off the disciplines of sociology. They basically pretty much came from Marx's work, but he was talking about how ideology worked a bit, and how the ruling class manages to maintain its power. So when these revolutions happened in Russia at the time, people thought that the communist revolution would actually happen in the countries that was most developed. This is what Marx thought. He thought that that actually the first place it would probably happen would be Britain or Germany, because they've got the most developed industry. And when you've got the most developed industry, you'll have the most developed working class. By this, he means people who are working in the factories, the proletariat. But this didn't happen. What happened was we had the revolution in Russia, which was largely a pre-capitalist society. It was largely a peasant society, with some parts of the feudal system still left and some small industry.
But mostly agrarian.
Yeah. Like some of the major cities might have had the starting of, industry, but they were nowhere near as industrialized as, say, Germany or Britain or America at the time. So the revolution started there, and a lot of the Marxists were going, oh, that was a bit strange. But then they thought, and the Russians, Lenin and Stalin and all these guys at the time, what they were really afraid at the time was that they wouldn't be able to hold on to the revolution, and that they were actually, the other imperial countries were invading them and supporting the civil war. So they were really waiting for Germany to basically have their revolution. And there was a revolution in Germany, I think 1921, I forget the dates exactly, but it didn't succeed. And this was a major problem for Marxists. They were trying to say, why did this not succeed in Germany? No, this was the great failure. This was a large reason, probably, why the Soviet Union devolved into such a state as it did. Because if they had another industrial powerhouse on their side, they would have been able to fend off, say, a lot of attacks, and they would have been much more powerful and been able to maybe develop along a different path, where they wouldn't have ended up essentially going into like a kind of siege mentality. And so the left then sought out to figure out why didn't this work. And one of the reasons they thought is that the culture of the working class in the Germany, and say in a lot of the Western societies, was preventing, say, this revolution. So that people were being slightly, they were prevented from being radical by certain cultural things, like, say, religion, or say how these kind of ideas, maybe the development of society in certain areas, and all this. So this became an analysis to try and figure out, hey, why the hell didn't the German Revolution and these other revolutions that we thought would work didn't work? So a lot of these Marxists, they started, and the major one is in the Frankfurt School, they started trying to basically dissect culture and understand culture from a Marxist perspective. And what happened was this ended up kind of becoming absorbed by the kind of liberal classes in America and Europe and wherever. And this is kind of where political correctness and some of these things ended up coming out of. And so this was hated by a lot of the right, probably for 2 reasons. One, that it had to do with the Reds and communism and revolution, and two, that it was stopping, say, people from being able to feel okay by being racist or sexist or, you know, by those types of things that cultural Marxism was trying to break down. So the idea behind it was, if we can break down these cultural barriers to revolution, the next time we have a revolution, people should be able to see more clearly the nature of their society and not be fooled by, the different ways in which the ruling classes legitimize their wealth.
So that was a very good summation, not a very good nutshell version of a summation. But
sorry about that.
That's all right. It's pretty clear that people on the right, particularly in the United States, who are inveighing against cultural Marxism are not meaning to invoke that full history. What do they mean when they inveigh against it?
Well, I think they kind of do. Like, I think the people that use it as a slur, like these terms, cultural Marxism, they don't come from, say, like, a KKK guy sitting on his porch being a racist. They actually come from the intelligentsia of the right. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So these are the people that actually, the people who probably most study Marx, apart from, say, the people who call themselves Marxists, are the extreme right, because they really want to understand what Marx had to say about it, and they know that he was probably right. Yeah. So they really analyze his stuff. So, and when they use that term, they use it for very specific reasons. They use it because how it chimes. Say, for example, in most Western countries, the word Marx or a Marxist has got a very negative connotation. I think it's changing now with the changing in the climate of the politics. But if my opinion of what a Marxist would have been 10 years ago, I don't know what I would have thought about it, but it wouldn't have been positive. But so I think when they use it, I think it's all wrapped up. I find it the people who use it as a slur and propagate it as a slur definitely know what they mean. And I think then it just becomes one of these catch-all phrases, like, a PC warrior, or it basically becomes a meme. I think is probably the best way to think about it.
Well, it was a meme to start with, but it becomes a successful meme.
Yes, yeah. It's very, very successful. Like, it's weird. I remember, like, when I went looking to understand it first, I was on the internet, and most of the things you can find, say, on YouTube talking about it, are literally far right organizations. I think these guys, I don't think there's anybody who reads Marx more than far right people.
Well, I think that people who are unfamiliar with Marx, and I haven't even read the first 100 pages of Capital, which you want me to do. So I'm certainly not an authority, and I don't present myself as one, but I think people would be really surprised to discover that how much of the mainstream discourse around capitalism, which comes from pro-capitalists, is referencing Marx and using vocabulary originally laid down by Marx, far more so than, say they're referencing Adam Smith.
Yeah. Like, it's very... It's one thing I always say is that, like, when Marx did his work on capitalism, and he did it, all economics at the time was based on what they call labor theory of values. So it means the price of an object is kind of intrinsically related to the amount of hours of labor that went into it. And after Marx came along and solved all these problems, and it was ideologically unacceptable what he said, they literally just went around, and within 20 years have just completely changed economic theory to be something that's entirely nonsensical. But it is amazing. Like, a lot of the things, like the exploitation of labor, we have the financialization of stuff, all of these, the neoliberal stuff. Now, some of these terms mightn't have been actually by Marx himself, but nearly all of these terms you hear are actually by Marxist economists. I'm trying to think of all of the ones. There's, like, I don't know, there are so many of these left terms that are starting to get into the common parlance, that, you know, they all have a Marxist root. You know, I don't know. You had Steve Keen on your show a few years ago.
He's been on a couple times, yeah.
Yeah. So Steve Keen is he's a what
For
they would
those who
call
don't know,
yes.
he's an Australian academic and an economist who wrote a book. What's the name of his book? It basically predicted the economic implosion of 2008 before it happened. Reinventing Economics, I think, is his book.
Yeah, so like Steve Keen, he's what I call it. He calls himself. He's a kind of a Keynesian economist. So that would be kind of like a New Dealer type economist. Calls himself a post-Keynesian economist. But in his book, that would attack, say, he had this book Debunking Economics, and where he would attack, say, the economic theory and show how it's all like empirically false and none of it actually works in the real world. He spent attacking most of the book attacking, say, the establishment economics, and then the second half of the book he attacked Marxist economics. Yeah, so even the left will itself attack Marx because there is a capitalist left and a non-capitalist left. So it's all very strange. But so all of these different terms that you will hear about economics, a huge amount of them have to do with what Marx's analysis, but you know, people, you would have no idea that the impact that he would have had. You know, it's kind of staggering.
Well, Tom, I'm afraid that the time that I have available for this conversation is gone, and we didn't really get onto any of the tracks that I was hoping to follow very far. So maybe we could do it again sometime in the not too distant future.
Yeah, no hassle at all.
Alrighty. Well, now I'm going to see about trying to get the audio from this YouTube video. Hopefully it actually got published. I just never trust G+ with anything, and you know, until the finished product is in hand.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, sorry about that.
Well,
we probably went off a bit onto Marx too much there, but
well, and way too long talking about accents and things at the beginning.
I do like accents, though. Your accent is so. Mart, are you from the same place as Marty's from?
No.
Marty's. Where's Marty? Is he
North Carolina?
Oh yeah, I've been listening to you. The last time I don't know when the last time I was talking to you, but I'm a big Walking Dead fan now. I got you to thank for that.
Good.
Yeah, no, we're just watching all the series again. Myself and my missus are watching the whole lot again. So we've stomped our way through all the way up to nearly season 6 again.
Ugh, grueling, isn't it?
It's good. I do like it though. I think it's very good. It's weird because I don't like zombie films, but I like Walking Dead. Well,
you know, I think the perennial theme on The Walking Dead is that if you survive the first couple of months of the zombie apocalypse, you're golden. You know, there's really no danger. You figured out how the zombies operate. You figured out how to keep yourself safe and fed. It's the other humans in the world that are the main threat to your life at this point.
So who's going to get their head bashed in, do you think?
I think it's Daryl.
Oh, do you? Oh, yeah. Wow. I don't think it's Daryl. Do you know what I think it is? I think it's Michonne.
Oh, I would hate that. I think
because her character has kind of fallen down a bit.
I think it's definitely a male character that got his head bashed in, because I think that one of the last things we hear was Negan, who's doing the bashing. You know, we're seeing the bashing from the point of view of the person who's being killed. And one of the last things we hear is Negan saying, "Oh, look at him taking it like a champ."
Yeah.
So male pronoun there.
Yeah. Another thing as well is, yeah. Well, I hope it's not Daryl, because Daryl is. I think you know that guy who stole Daryl's bow. What's his name again? He's the one who stole the crossbow. Yeah.
The burnt face.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I can't remember, but he's in the comics apparently, and he's major character in the comics. But I think they've set it up that Daryl and him have to have some kind of a battle, you know, and I don't think they're going to just wipe Daryl out there. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, in the comic, it's Glenn who gets killed. By Negan with the baseball bat in a really gruesome way. He basically knocks his face off, because the baseball bat is wrapped in barbed wire.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
What do you call it? Have you been watching The Fear or Walking Dead? How rubbish is that?
I don't care for it. I have watched it, yeah.
That last episode of the final one, I think that might have been one of the worst piece of television I've ever seen.
There's a lot of competition for that honor.
There is, but it was just rubbish. I feel like I don't ever want to watch Fear the Walking Dead ever again now after watching that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they
so
made
wrong?
good casting choices, but and every now and again they seem to find a little, a piece of the formula that would work for them, but they just don't seem to know it when they have it, and they wander off into the weeds. It's a wasted opportunity, isn't
it? It just shows you maybe. I don't know. It's kind of as a person watching it, you can obviously say why this isn't working or it is working. It's a wonder why the writers can't see it. Maybe it's just really hard to write good stuff.
Well, I think that's an understatement.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And when you're writing for television, it's more than just the writing, because a well-written story can be botched any number of places along the way to being a finished television show. But if you start with bad writing, it's really hard to fix. Like if you've listened to the Z-Realm podcast, Marty and I have been really irritated with The Walking Dead from time to time. But once it leaves the writer's room, everything is so professional. Everything is so well done. You can't fault them for anything beyond what happens in the writer's room.
Yeah. No, the thing is, well, I thought the season 6, I thought it was my favorite season.
I thought it started really strong, or maybe I'm thinking of season 5. How did season 6 start?
That's one. Is it where I'm thinking it's the one where Morgan came back and they had a 1 hour one with Morgan, and Rick had just shot your man in the head when they stepped in. And then they had the thing with all the walkers in the quarry.
Right. I thought the first 3 episodes were really, really strong. And then for the next 5 episodes, basically the bulk of the first half of the season, I thought it got weak and just sort of wandered around and spent its momentum. The sort of teasing with, did Glenn really die? Didn't he die? I thought that was all really ill-advised.
Yeah, I know. I think I kind of like it because we watched some of the older series. Thing is, nothing compares to the General. That's the real thing.
The General?
The Governor.
Oh, right.
When the Governor was about, like that was fucking class.
He was a better character in the TV show than he was in the comic. In the comic, he was a sort of Weasley guy with a biker mustache, and he just wasn't, the actor that they cast for the role really brought an entirely new dimension to the character, which I think was really excellent.
Yeah, David Morrissey was really good in that. Yeah. Oh well, I hope Glenn gets killed though. I do say Glenn I find so boring.
He's just such a good guy.
Yeah, he's so fucking earnest. I just want someone to bash his brains in with a baseball bat.
Oh, that's what happens in the comic. Yeah. I mean, if you just do a search, if your internet starts working again and you can do image searches, you can find those panels, and they're grisly. It's a rough end for that character.
Good. I wonder how much they'll show, because they do show zombies, like people putting their hands through zombies' skulls and exploding them. So they might show quite a lot of Glenn really getting it.
Yeah, the reason I think it's Daryl is there's been a search on the part of AMC to take the character who plays Daryl, what's his name, Norman Reedus, and find him a new AMC project.
Oh,
yeah.
So maybe he's not killed now. Maybe he's killed by your man in a while. Well, what do you reckon? You take Daryl out of that show.
It's Daryl who's going to get killed, because he's also an invented character for the TV show. He's not in the comic at all. So
he's probably the best character.
No future role that he has to play. There's no big landmark in the comic that absolutely requires Daryl to be there.
But Carol's not in the comic anymore either, is she?
No, she died fairly early, and they killed off the TV character Andrea. because she was one of the actors who was associated with the original showrunner, Frank Darabont, and he left, and there was bad blood around that, and a lot of the people that he brought in with him who were associated with him from previous projects, like the guy who played Dale, they killed Dale off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so she was another one. But they've taken the character of what is her name? I think it's Sasha, and turned her into the Andrea from the comics. They've made her the one who's a really good shot. She's really good with a rifle. So they put her up in the clock tower or the bell tower, to be the sniper. That was Andrea in the comic.
But yeah, no, I think, like, to me, when we're watching it, like, Daryl is the best character in the whole thing.
Well, he's certainly a fan favorite.
Isn't he? So, like, if they killed him, I think people would be fucking pissed off.
I think they would, but I think they'd watch.
Yeah, I don't know. You get rid of Daryl, and it feels like the ass could fall out of the show.
Yeah, it could. There was a meme. It said, "If the redneck dies, we riot."
Yeah, bring it on,
Tom. The longer this file gets, the more of a bear it is to manage. So I need to hang up. But it was good talking to you, and let's talk again soon.
Brilliant. All right, Kamo. Good luck.
Bye-bye.